Hey guys, tonight we're heading into the scorched heart of the Persian plateau, where temperatures climb with the sun and shade is a form of currency. You're standing in a place where sand crunches underfoot like burnt sugar, and the horizon shimmers with heat that bends the world into a dream. The walls are the color of cinnamon, and the sky is a dome of white-blue fire. It's not a forgiving place. It's not even trying to be, and you probably won't survive this. At least, not without some serious architectural assistance. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're feeling awake enough, drop your location and your local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're barefoot, you're thirsty, and everything smells faintly of hot dust and dried figs. Your sandals, if you've managed to hold onto them, are nearly too hot to touch. The stones beneath you seem to pulse with warmth, like the earth has decided to do away with subtleties and go full oven. Somewhere nearby, a dog lets out a lazy bark and immediately regrets it. The heat is not a guest here, it's the host, and you're just trying not to pass out before noon. You're walking the streets of a Persian city around, let's say, the 14th century. Maybe it's Yazd, maybe it's Kashan. Names change, but the sun never does. The architecture rises up around you in dusty hues of adobe and stone, all baked, together by generations of sunlight. These walls aren't just decorative, they're thick, practical, and covered in tiny cracks that whisper of past summers just like this one. As you walk, you notice something curious. No windows, at least not where you'd expect them. The walls are blank, almost severe. They give nothing away. You half expect them to lean in and scold you for not wearing a hat. But above you, something does catch your eye. Odd, chimney-like towers, poking up into the sky like periscopes from a sunken world. At first you think they're just for smoke, or perhaps some ceremonial flair. But no, they're more clever than that. These are badgirs, or wind catchers, though that word doesn't do them justice. Calling them wind catchers is like calling a ship a wave rider. Technically accurate, criminally understated. The air feels heavy, dense, not hot like a flame, but hot like a thick wool blanket laid across your shoulders. As you trudge forward, a breeze brushes your cheek. Just a flicker, a teasing little wisp of relief. You blink, startled. Where did that come from? You pause near a shadowy doorway, where an old man fans himself with a woven palm leaf and chews something that looks like dried apricot in resignation. He gestures lazily toward a narrow alley, its mouth barely wide enough for two people to pass. You take the hint. As you step into the alley, the temperature drops, slightly. Not much, but just enough to make your sweat hesitate. The buildings here lean inward like conspirators, their upper levels reaching for each other in quiet solidarity against the heat. It's not cool exactly, but it's less murderous. The air tastes less like it's been reheated through 3 layers of stone. You realize something important. This city is designed to fight back, not with brute force or technology, but with cleverness, with angles, with walls that shade themselves, and alleys that funnel what little breeze exists toward the people who need it most. You keep walking. Someone's grilling eggplant behind a wall. You can smell the smoke curling upward, but the heat from the fire barely touches you here. Every turn in the alley is like a little trick, a magician's sleight of hand in stone and shadow. The ground is uneven, cobbled from old stones and newer repairs, each one worn down like the foot of a mountain goat. You duck beneath a low archway. Ahead of you, another tower looms, this one closer, more detailed. You can see it's not solid, but latticed, full of narrow vents and angled slats. It almost looks like an organ pipe, a musical instrument made for catching invisible music. And just like that, you feel it again. A breeze, a genuine, cool, lazy puff of air. You tilt your face toward it, half expecting it to vanish, but it doesn't. It lingers, like it's been waiting for you. Mainstream historians agree that these towers weren't decorative. They were functional, part of an elaborate system of passive cooling that let ancient Persians live in climates that today would melt a smart car. But historians still argue whether these wind towers were originally Persian, or if they evolved from earlier Egyptian and Mesopotamian designs. Some claim the concept arose independently in multiple hot regions. Others suggest ancient architects were in constant dialogue with their neighbors, trading techniques like gossip and spices. You, of course, are just trying not to faint. You step closer to the base of the tower. There's an open doorway leading into a courtyard. The space beyond is still, shaded, and mysteriously inviting. As you pass through the threshold, the temperature dips again. The air here doesn't just feel cooler, it smells cooler. Damp stone, old clay, a hint of mint from a nearby planter. Someone's watered the floor earlier, and you can see dark patches drying slowly in the corners. The breeze that greeted you outside now whispers more confidently through the courtyard, dipping down from above and twirling lazily around your ankles. You sit on the edge of a raised platform. For the first time today, you stop sweating. A cat blinks at you from a windowsill. It looks smug. It probably owns the place. This, you realize, is the magic of ancient Persian cooling. Not just the clever structures, but the whole ecosystem. Alleys, towers, courtyards, fountains, all conspiring to turn inhospitable heat into something almost bearable. Almost. Of course, it's only mid-morning. Things are going to get hotter before they get cooler. The sun is higher now, casting shorter shadows, and you begin to notice how even the animals have surrendered. A donkey tied to a fig tree looks like it's debating the meaning of life. A line of ants reroutes around a sunlit stone as if it's too hot to touch. You lean against a wall, which somehow feels cooler than the air itself. Another small miracle. But let's not pretend. The sun is trying to kill you. This isn't melodrama. It's physics. The kind that doesn't flinch when it finds soft human skin in its path. You're somewhere in central Iran, maybe the edge of a desert like Dasht-e-Kavir. In the summer, the temperature can soar past 40 degrees Celsius, over 100 Fahrenheit for those of us still clinging to the imperial system like a favorite mug. And you're not in some fantasy desert with romantic dunes and camel caravans plodding photogenically across the skyline. You're in a real city, with real people who somehow managed not to melt before lunch. How? That's the question simmering on the back burner of your brain as you shuffle along the narrow street. Behind the stillness of the mud brick walls, life carries on. Somewhere, water is being drawn from a well. A door creaks, then slams. The heat eats the sound almost as fast as it arrives. You pass a bakery, not a storefront, but a squat building, with a low chimney and a side window where a boy is selling flatbread from a basket. The smell is divine. Flour, yeast, and the faintest char. The irony doesn't escape you. Baking bread in a city that already feels like an oven. You glance up again at the strange towers, badgirs, scattered across rooftops. Some look like tall chimneys, others are squat and wide, but all share a common trait: vents. Each one has openings facing different directions, like they're sniffing for breeze. The first time you notice them, they seem purely architectural. Now they're starting to feel alive, like parts of a sleeping creature that inhales heat and exhales relief. The Persians didn't invent the sun, but they did figure out how to negotiate with it. You're starting to appreciate the subtle brilliance behind it all. For starters, there's the placement of streets. Narrow and winding, always oriented to maximize shade during the worst hours of the day. Many streets run east-west, meaning their walls. Now you're starting to understand. This isn't just about catching wind. It's about trapping comfort. Mainstream historians will tell you that badgirs use a combination of airflow principles, thermal siphoning, pressure differentials, and strategic venting, to redirect even the faintest breeze down into the living space. Hot air rises, cool air sinks. Openings on the tower's windward side suck air inside, while the leeward side creates negative pressure to draw warm air out. It's basically climate control, without wires, motors, or carbon emissions. But historians still argue whether these systems were designed through trial and error, or if they followed formal scientific understanding. Was it intuitive genius, or applied physics before physics had textbooks? Meanwhile, you just know it works. The badgear you're standing under has 4 directional vents, one for each cardinal direction. Not all wind catchers were built the same. Some were single direction, meant for regions with prevailing winds. Others were multi-directional, like this one, allowing it to adapt to changes. You imagine the person who designed this tower, a bricklayer maybe, or an architect with sunburned notes and a healthy respect for thermodynamics. The materials matter too. Mud brick, plastered with straw and lime, stays cool in the heat and warm in the cold. The interiors of the walls are thick, sometimes a meter deep, holding the chill of the night long into the next day. That's the thing about ancient Persian architecture. It's not trying to fight the environment. It's trying to flow with it. You hear a rustle, just a breeze, sneaking down through the tower's slats and winding through the shaded courtyard. You stretch out on the platform beside the pool. The stone is cool. You exhale and realize you're not actively melting anymore. Congratulations. You've survived your first Persian midday. A small bird hops down beside the water's edge and takes a dainty sip. You watch it flutter away, seemingly unaffected by the heat. You close your eyes for a moment. You almost fall asleep. And then someone, somewhere, starts sweeping. Of course they do. The sweeping stops, mercifully, and the silence returns, broken only by the occasional chirp of a pigeon who sounds vaguely unimpressed with your life choices. You blink up at the badgear and wonder again how something that looks so simple can be so clever. No screws, no switches, just airflow, gravity, and a well-placed vent or two. You stretch your legs and wander out of the courtyard. The path leads through a low passage, its arched ceiling forming a smooth tunnel of shade. It's like the house is ushering you out politely, with one last cool breeze nudging you toward the next chapter. You emerge into another alley, narrower than before, and lined with mud brick walls the color of old cinnamon. You drag your hand along one. It's warm, but not hot. You've touched laptop chargers that burned hotter than this wall. The material, sun-baked and textured, feels like it remembers stories, laughter, arguments, maybe the sound of a toddler toppling a water jug. You pass a door with a small opening at the top, just a few inches wide, screened by a lattice of wooden slats. Another trick. Let the breeze in. Keep the glare out. Privacy, airflow, and filtered light all in one. Persian engineering didn't stop at wind towers. It's in the bones of everything. And now it's time we talk about what's beneath your feet. You crouch beside a half-hidden grate nestled at the base of a wall. A faint dampness clings to the edges. Not much, just enough to catch your eye. You lean closer, and yes, cool air is drifting upward from below. What sorcery is this? It's not sorcery. It's cadence. Beneath your toes lies an invisible, ancient marvel, an underground network of tunnels, sloping gently from the foothills into the cities and villages of the desert. A subterranean water highway, dug by hand and guided by mathematics, gravity, and unshakable patience. Mainstream historians trace cadence back over 2,500 years, possibly even older. They were the veins of Persian civilization, channeling water from underground aquifers to surface communities with minimal evaporation. No pumps, no pipes, just clever slope and timeless grit. The brilliance was in the gradient. Never too steep, never too flat. Just the right incline to let gravity do the work without rushing the water. At intervals, vertical shafts were dug to allow access for maintenance and ventilation. From above, they looked like a string of holes dotting the desert, like a game of divine whack-a-mole. And here's where things get really beautiful. Some badgears were connected to cadence. Imagine this. Hot desert air is pulled down through the tower, funneled underground where it flows over the cool surface of cadence water, As the air chills, it becomes denser and sinks naturally into the living space below. The result? Air conditioning. Centuries before electricity. You reach down and hold your hand over the small grate again. The coolness isn't strong, but it's consistent. Like a whisper from the underworld. A breeze bearing ancient secrets and the faint scent of wet stone. But historians still argue whether the connection between Badgirs and Kanats was deliberate engineering or a happy accident later, formalized. Some say it depended on regional climate. Others believe only wealthier homes could afford such integration. What's clear is that the synergy existed, and in the blistering heat of central Persia, it was the architectural equivalent of a miracle. You rise and continue walking, the alley now sloping slightly downward. Not enough to trip you, but enough to make you notice the architecture's quiet intent. You pass another home, this one with a wide door framed by simple tile work. A woman is sweeping dust off the steps with a palm frond broom. She pauses and gives you a nod that says, "Yes, it's hot," and "No, we're not out of bread." You nod back, not trusting your vocal cords to form anything coherent in this heat. Inside the home, you catch a glimpse of a tall room with thick walls and wooden beams crossing the ceiling. It's dim, even during daylight, a deliberate gloom that doubles as relief. The room is probably part of a sardab, a kind of basement or underground chamber. Many traditional Persian homes included them, tucked below the living quarters like subterranean oases. Sardabs were where families gathered during the day's cruelest hours, often built directly beneath the badgirs for maximum airflow. Some sardabs even had small pools or stone benches along the walls, designed to trap and hold cool air. You imagine slipping into such a space, lying down on the stone, and letting sleep take over. The kind of nap you write songs about. The kind of nap a tired son might take if it ever got the chance. You shuffle on, still following the slope of the city. Each street feels like a vein leading towards something cooler, quieter, deeper. There's a pattern here, you realize. A gentle, citywide choreography of heat and relief, shadow and sun, breath in and breath out. You pass a shaded stall where two older men play backgammon. They don't look up, though one of them reaches lazily for a chipped ceramic cup and takes a long sip of what must be lukewarm tea. Because nothing says, "It's 104 degrees outside," like voluntarily drinking hot liquid. There's logic behind it, allegedly. Something about internal temperature regulation. Or maybe they just like their rituals. You pause beside a worn fountain, dry now, but built with stone channels that suggest it once flowed with water from the Qanat. You run a finger along the carved edge. The stone is cool to the touch, even in direct sun. Probably limestone, maybe granite, maybe magic. Above you, another badgir catches your eye. This one's taller than the others, maybe 3 or 4. Stories. Its vents are trimmed in faded blue tile, geometric designs that once dazzled and now just comfort. Beauty here isn't a luxury. It's a form of respect for the viewer, for the space, for the sun itself. You look up through the vents and imagine the air slipping down like a lazy river, winding its way through narrow ducts and into someone's home. A slow exhale from a stone throat. You smile despite yourself. It's still hot, but now the heat feels like a puzzle you're slowly solving. The shadows have stretched longer now, inching toward evening, though you wouldn't. Know it by the heat still radiating from the stones beneath your feet. The air has shifted, not cooler exactly, but a little less combative. Like the sun, having dominated the sky all day, is reluctantly loosening its grip. You find yourself in a quieter part of town, where even the cats have given up pretending. They're in charge. One sprawled out beside a water trough barely opens an eye as you pass. It's a dignified surrender. You admire that. Up ahead, a larger structure catches your attention. Not a home this time, but what looks like a public building, perhaps a caravanserai or an old merchant's warehouse. The kind of place where traders once gathered, their mules groaning under bales of silk and spices. their boots thick with desert dust. You imagine the scent inside. Sweat, cumin, parchment, sun-warmed wool, and of course, the blessed cool of shade. As you wander closer, you notice it too has a badgir, only this one is unusually ornate. Tall, octagonal, with bands of glazed turquoise tile spiraling upward like a lazy helix. Decorative wooden slats jut from its crown, not functional, just flair. But the structure below is all business. Thick walls, high doorways, and windows set so deep they seem afraid of the sun. You step through an open archway, ducking instinctively, as you pass beneath a thick wooden lintel. Inside, the space yawns wide. A central courtyard ringed by arcades, each one leading into shaded alcoves. In the center, a dry fountain, surrounded by benches worn smooth by centuries of sitters. A breeze snakes through the building, almost too subtle to notice at first. But it's there, whispering across the stones, ruffling the edge of a stray cloth tied to a post. It smells faintly of brick and old water. You follow it with your eyes, tracing its invisible path back to the badgir perched above. Here, you finally understand something that's been teasing the edge of your brain. Wind towers weren't just residential luxuries. They were civic infrastructure. Marketplaces had them. Mosques had them. Schools, bathhouses, even prisons. Yes, prisons were cooled by these skyward funnels. Wherever humans gathered, Persians found a way to bring the breeze with them. The genius lies not just in design, but in intention. These weren't elitist comforts. They were communal solutions, designed for resilience, for dignity in the face of relentless heat. You sit on the edge of the dry fountain, and your spine thanks you for the rest. The stone is blessedly cool. Around you, the silence is thick, but not oppressive. A single sparrow lands on a nearby bench and fluffs its feathers, tilting its head as if to say, "You finally figured it out." Mainstream history books, usually, dedicate a paragraph or two to wine towers. A sidebar maybe. But standing here, you feel that old suspicion tugging at you again. The sense that ancient people weren't merely surviving, they were thriving, creating systems that understood their environment better than some modern technologies do. And yet, historians still debate how standardized badgir construction really was. Some believe guilds of builders passed the techniques down like sacred recipes, refined over centuries. Others argue the towers were mostly improvisational, adapted by region, climate, even personal aesthetic. The truth is likely somewhere in between, formal knowledge wrapped in generational intuition. You rise and move deeper into the building. The air inside is a touch cooler now, thanks in part to thick adobe walls that hold the day's early chill. Each room you pass seems positioned to optimize light and breeze. Narrow windows high on the wall, always angled just enough to catch movement without glare. In one corner, you find what appears to be a kitchen, though calling it that feels wrong. No gleaming appliances here, just a hearth, a few earthen jars, and a niche in the wall where someone once stored spices or oil. You can almost smell the smoke of long-gone meals, flatbread sizzling, lentils simmering, mint crushed into yogurt. You imagine someone's grandmother here, sleeves rolled up, stirring a pot and yelling for someone to open the vent so she doesn't roast alive. And sure enough, above the hearth, a vertical shaft leads upward, likely another wind channel or smoke escape. Even cooking didn't happen without airflow in mind. As you walk out of the kitchen, you glance up again toward the badgir. It's become a kind of companion now, this quiet, towering sentinel watching over you wherever you go. You start to notice smaller features too. Wooden screens carved into intricate lattice work, placed just beneath tower vents in some places. These Mashrabiyah-style designs weren't just for beauty. They helped break the wind into gentler currents, diffusing its pressure and cooling the air further as it entered a room. Form meeting function in a warm, dusty embrace. And somewhere in your wanderings, you begin to feel a shift. The city no longer feels like a furnace. You've slowed down, acclimated, tuned into its rhythm. The wind towers are part of that rhythm, pulsing quietly above rooftops, invisible arteries channeling comfort into the bones of the city. You leave the caravanserai through a side exit, stepping back into a side street lined with pomegranate, trees and low benches. A few children are chasing a hoop made from bent reed, laughter echoing against the clay walls. They don't seem to mind the heat. Maybe because they know where to go when it becomes too much. Or maybe because they've grown up under the breath of the badgirs, trusting them like you trust an old ceiling fan on a sleepless summer night. You sit again, just for a moment, and then you feel it. Soft, consistent, like someone exhaling across your cheek. The wind tower breathes, and you do too. You blink slowly, lulled by the rhythm of your own breath, matching it to the gentle pulses of air drifting down from somewhere above. The sensation is so subtle you might imagine it, except, well, you don't have that good of an imagination. And the air really is cooler here, in this quiet corner of a sun-struck city designed not to fight the desert, but to dance with it. You rise again, reluctantly, and make your way down another street, following a route that seems chosen for you, perhaps by instinct, or perhaps by the quiet nudge of a breeze that wants to show you more. Eventually, you find yourself before a structure that seems almost sacred. Not a temple, not a palace, but one of the most beloved buildings in any community, a bathhouse. Its outer walls are unassuming, earthen, faded, blank but solid. But the real magic happens inside, as you discover when a creaky wooden door gives way to a tiled vestibule bathed in half-light. The temperature drops immediately. It's not quite cold, but compared to the sun-blasted world you just left, it feels like you've stepped inside a citrus-scented iceberg. This is a hammam, a public bathhouse, and you are standing in one of the most strategically cooled buildings in the city. Step by careful step, you pass through the sarbonnet, the undressing room. You imagine others before you setting down bundles of clothing, slipping into sandals, clinking copper bowls together as they prepare to wash away dust and judgment in equal measure. Above, a modest dome with tiny stained glass insets filters sunlight into soft pastel beams. The air is thick but clean, carrying faint notes of rosewater and polished stone, and drifting down from high above. A breeze, yes, even here. Because of course wind towers cooled bathhouses too. Some were connected via long horizontal channels to keep the moist, humid air from becoming oppressive. Others helped circulate, warm steam without trapping it, ensuring the bathhouse felt like a place of ritual, not suffocation. The transition from hot room to cold room was calculated, intentional, and strangely comforting, as if the building itself was encouraging your body to soften, to rest, to let go. You continue into the Garmkhana, the hot room. Tiles line the floor in worn geometric patterns. You picture someone reclining on one of the raised stone platforms, eyes closed, steam rising in dreamy ribbons around them. A bath attendant hums, a tune you don't recognize, and no one seems to be in a rush. In the corner, a clay brazier glows faintly, its coals half asleep. You notice an arched ceiling overhead, ribbed like a seashell, designed to catch sound and soften it. Even whispers echo like lullabies in here, and once again, airflow is king. Small vents near the floor and ceiling work together to circulate heat, remove excess humidity, and balance the room's temperature. The bathhouse is a sensory experience, yes, but it's also an engineering marvel, one that took airflow seriously, even when surrounded by steam and sweat. Mainstream historians often overlook how socially critical these places were. Bathhouses weren't just for hygiene, they were cultural hubs. People gathered here to talk politics, plan weddings, swap recipes, and complain about how nobody makes melon sherbet like they used to. Some scholars argue that bathhouses were the emotional living rooms of old Persian cities. But, say it with me, historians still debate the exact role of wind towers in these hammams. Some insist they were primarily for cooling the entry halls, not the bath spaces themselves. Others point to regional bathhouses where ductwork and badgear vents were clearly integrated. The truth, again, probably depended on location, wealth, and the temperament of whoever was in charge of construction that year. Still, standing in the center of the room, feeling air shift gently from unseen vents, It's hard not to believe the design was deliberate. The breeze isn't strong. It wouldn't dare be in a place like this. But it's there, as consistent as a heartbeat. You sit for a moment on a bench carved from stone, the surface worn smooth by generations of bathers. A small trickle of water still murmurs somewhere nearby, running through a buried pipe or an open channel in the floor. You could stay here for hours, you think. Let your pulse slow. Let your thoughts settle into something less sharp. Let the silence do its work. Outside, the day has softened. Golden light filters through dust in the air like spices through a sieve. You leave the bathhouse slowly, body heavy in the best way. The kind of tired that means you've earned your rest. You walk without a destination, your path winding through narrow lanes, where children kick a leather ball against walls their ancestors built. Every few houses you pass another wind tower. Some are squat and square, others elegant and fluted, like tulips carved from sand. Their silhouettes etch patterns against the sky, timeless, silent, watchful. And as you move, you notice something else. Everywhere, the city seems to breathe. A soft current through alleys. A gentle rush past your ear as you turn a corner. It's like you're walking through the lungs of the earth, and the badgers are its nostrils. In modern life, you might flick a switch and forget the machine behind the comfort. But here the comfort is part of the landscape. Built with hands and sun and silence, no wires, no hum, wires, no hum. Just the elemental balance of heat and air, light and shade, stone and sky. You pass an old man dozing in a doorway, a folded cloth shielding his eyes from the sun. Behind him, inside the house, a visible shiver in the air, the sign of a badger at work. It's hard not to feel a bit envious. You're not even sure what time it is anymore. But it doesn't matter. The air moves, the city breathes, and you do too. You're walking now without thinking, more gliding than stepping, really. The sun is lower, casting long gold fingers across dusty bricks and flickering rooftops. Shadows stretch lazily along narrow alleys, and the scent in the air has changed again. Drier, slightly herbal. Someone nearby is grinding cardamom, or maybe mint. It's a good sign. Evening tea must be on the way. You turn a corner and find yourself in a small square. Not bustling, nothing ever really bustles in this heat, but alive in that quiet, ancient way. A water basin sits at the center, catching reflections of clouds that don't plan on raining. Around it, a few older folks sit on mats sipping from delicate ceramic cups. No one looks surprised to see you. They nod as if to say, "Yes, we were expecting you eventually." You settle onto a bench beside a low wall and let your eyes drift toward the structures around you. Homes mostly, built close together for shared shade. But it's their rooftops that capture your attention. All around the square, wind towers rise like chimneys on elegant cathedrals, some simple, some with sculpted facades, others crowned in colored tiles faded to the gentlest pastels. Each badgir is slightly different, and yet they all follow the same principles. Height to catch the breeze, vertical shafts to channel it, inner walls to divide and redirect. Some even have clever additions, small internal pools of water that further cool the air as it descends. That's right, water-cooled wind. Your air conditioner could never. You imagine a summer evening here centuries ago, families gathering outside while dinner cooks, children chasing fireflies under a half moon, and above them all, these towers drawing down air like long sighs, releasing it softly into the heart of every home. A gentle nudge of physics, a whisper of architecture. The Persian wind tower was never a one-size-fits-all device. Historians point out how designs adapted region by region. In coastal cities like Bandar Abbas, towers were shorter and broader to handle humid sea breezes. In arid places like Yazd, where you now seem to be, judging by the adobe color palette and the sheer density of towers, they were tall, narrow, and sometimes featured multiple directional openings. And yet, despite this variety, the underlying Idea was always the same. Live in balance with your environment. Don't dominate it, don't escape it. Just design your life to flow with it. You trace your gaze along the lines of one particular wind tower near the square's edge. It leans slightly, not out of disrepair, but with that same stubborn elegance as an elderly neighbor who refuses a walking stick. Still doing its job, still catching the breeze. And inside the homes below, that's where the real performance happens. The incoming air gets channeled through narrow vents, often past a shallow stone basin filled with water or porous clay pots that slowly evaporate. That evaporation pulls heat out of the air, cooling it before it reaches you. It's passive cooling, no motors, no fans, just physics wearing a linen robe. You may have heard the term kanat before, a marvelously Persian invention. Underground aqueducts, dug by hand, stretching for kilometers to bring water from mountain springs to thirsty cities. And guess what? In some cases, wind towers were connected directly to kanats. That's right. Some homes used the pressure differential created by wind towers to pull up cool air from beneath the earth, mixing it with above-ground breezes to create something utterly luxurious. A desert air cocktail, if you will. Now, scholars still debate just how common these kanat-based cooling systems were. Some claim they were reserved for wealthier homes, or for particularly sweltering summers. Others believe they were far more widespread than we think, just underdocumented because, well, people didn't tend to carve diagrams into the walls every time they got a breeze. You sit quietly with that thought, that maybe the greatest comforts are the ones no one feels the need to brag about. The unseen systems that just work, silently, generously. A breeze brushes your cheek again, and you close your eyes, letting yourself drift for a moment. You're half asleep already, and that's fine. No one here would fault you for dozing off. And if you listen closely, beneath the birdsong, beneath the rustling vines creeping along mud brick walls, you'll hear the breath of the towers. Each, one a lung, pulling in sky, exhaling relief. You imagine the city as a living organism. The towers are its nostrils, yes, but also its conscience, its patience, its strategy for survival without noise or complaint. A woman passes by with a basket of flatbread tucked under one arm. The aroma, warm, toasty, with a kiss of sesame, reminds you that this city doesn't just survive, it thrives, even in heat that would buckle the knees of a less prepared traveler, even in silence broken only by the hush of wind on clay. The sun slips lower now, kissing the tops of the towers with gold. Somewhere a call to prayer rises, not urgent, just folded into the hum of life. It's not jarring. Nothing here is. Even the voices of children calling to one another seem padded by the walls, gently muffled like the inside of a lullaby. Your eyelids get heavy again, but just before you drift off entirely, you catch sight of one last detail. A cat perched at the very base of a wind tower. It's pressed against the wall where the breeze leaks downward, fur fluttering ever so slightly. Even the cats, it seems, know where to go. You smile, eyes half-lidded. Maybe you'll curl up beside the wall too. Maybe you already have. You wake, or maybe just shift, in that gentle half-sleep where time has turned to honey. The kind of rest where your body is somewhere, but your mind is floating through someone else's memory. You're still in the city of wind towers, still surrounded by the soft shuffle of sandals on stone, the lazy rhythm of a breeze that seems to know its way better than you do. The evening has cooled everything but the walls, which still radiate the sun they stored all day. You touch one with your fingers and feel a warmth that's more comforting than hot, like the final heat from a baked potato, or the way your dog might feel after napping in a sunbeam. You rise, stretch without thinking, and make your way into a quiet residential neighborhood, one of those places with curved lanes instead of straight ones, where homes seem to grow like plants rather than sit like boxes. These aren't palaces. These are lived-in family homes, some ancient, some new, but wearing the same skin of adobe and lime wash, and nearly all of them have something special rising above the rooftops, their own personal wind tower. In this section of the city, it becomes even clearer how personalized these towers could be. Each one is subtly tailored, not just to the climate, but to the personality of the household. Some are small and modest, with single vertical shafts. Others have 2 or even 4 directional openings, capturing wind from every possible angle, like a spiderweb of air. The more you look, the more you realize. No 2 badgirs are exactly alike. It's a bit like browsing hats at a vintage market. Each one has quirks, flair, little eccentricities. A slight twist here, a scalloped ledge, there. An extra tier added perhaps by a show-off uncle who thought wind should enter with drama. Function, yes, but also expression. Mainstream history books might skim past this part, focusing more on empire, conquest, dynasties, those heavy-hitting themes that tend to involve too many swords. But the soul of a city often lives in the quieter details, doesn't it? Like the way your great-grandmother would fold the corner of her bread dough so it baked into a swirl. Or how your neighbour's fence is always just a little too tall. Wind towers were personal architecture, statements not just of status, but of style. And believe it or not, design trends did shift. Historians still argue whether the more intricate, multi-directional towers of later periods were more efficient, or just more fashionable. Was it truly better airflow? Or just architectural one-upmanship? Sure, Razor, your badgir cools some corners, but does it catch the morning and afternoon breeze with a triple-channel S-curve? Yes, even 18th century, dads might have been badgir hobbyists, but these towers were more than just ventilation tools. They became part of the home's emotional memory. Children learned to read the wind by listening to how it whispered down the shaft. Parents knew which opening needed its panel adjusted during the spring rains. Lovers wrote letters comparing their sweetheart's eyes to the colour of the light in the badgir at sunset. It was infrastructure, but also poetry. And you, drifting along these peaceful lanes, find yourself looking up more than forward. One tower has tiny blue tiles set into its base, just a few, but enough to glint like starlight when the sun hits them. Another has a carved wooden cap that turns gently, creaking every so often in a rhythm so slow it's practically asleep. And another, well, you're not sure what's going on with that one. It's got a twist in its shape, like a soft serve cone melted a little to the side. Maybe it was damaged once. Or maybe the builder had a few glasses of date wine and declared, no tower should be too symmetrical. You pass beneath it and feel a breeze touch your cheek, despite the stillness around you. That's the magic of the badgir. You don't see its work. You feel it. It's the kind of architecture that doesn't want credit. You pause again by a low doorway where an older woman is laying out bundles of herbs to dry. She nods in your direction, not surprised to see you. Maybe she remembers you from another lifetime. Behind her, the breeze flows lazily down from the ceiling, rustling the cloth curtain that separates the entry hall from the main room. The curtain sways, not like it's been blown, but like it's sighing. And here's the detail you almost missed. Above the threshold, just barely visible in the fading light, are hand-painted motifs, wind lines, spirals, and little birds, all curling toward the direction of the badgir. It's a language of its own, the house telling you which way the air flows, which way you should flow. You continue onward, past homes where cats lounge beneath the shafts of cool air like tiny emperors, past small windows left open strategically, not for light, but for cross-ventilation, past doorways where someone is always boiling tea and always ready to share it. And it occurs to you, this entire neighborhood is a map of invisible wind, a choreography of breath. Every step you take has been considered, not just for ease of walking, but for how the air might follow you. You smile to yourself. Who needs a weather app when your walls can feel the breeze? You drift onward, carried more by mood than motion, and find yourself on the edge of the city center now, where homes give way to courtyards, and courtyards open into something altogether grander. You're standing before a bathhouse. Not a flashy modern spa, mind you. No neon signs or pastel. Robes. This is a hammam Persian style. Arch ceilings, thick stone walls, and floors worn smooth by centuries of warm feet and quiet gossip. The wind towers here are more than just decorative. They're part of the choreography of calm. Step inside, and it's as if the city exhales. The shift is immediate. Cooler, dimmer. Your ears take a breath too, suddenly cushioned by the soft drip of water and the muffled scrape of a broom over tile. Now here's the twist. You might expect a bathhouse to be a steamy affair, but Persian hammams were masterpieces of temperature control. Separate rooms for hot, warm, and cool bathing. Thick insulation to trap heat where needed. And then, of course, wind towers to whisk away the rest, keeping the outer chambers blissfully temperate. As you explore, you notice a tower cleverly tucked into the domed roof, its shaft running directly above a marble bench where bathers sit and cool off after a soak. The breeze drifts down silently, barely noticeable at first, until you realize the stone isn't just cool from shade. It's being actively aerated, a slow cascade of air running over it like an invisible stream. Historians still argue whether this was an intentional luxury or a lucky byproduct of architectural reuse. Did ancient builders design the towers specifically for post-bath relief? Or did someone just sit down and think, it's weirdly nice right here? You know which theory you're rooting for. As you pad through the space in your imagination, and maybe your dreams depending on how drowsy you are, you catch the glint of polished copper basins and hear a faint clinking in the distance. Someone pouring rose water into a shallow dish, perhaps. Your footstep echoes against tiled walls, the colours faded to buttery greens and sleepy browns. And even here, underground in a way, the air moves. Quietly, purposefully. The tower does its work without fanfare. You're guided into a resting chamber, lined with thick rugs and low cushions. A few sleepy-eyed bathers lie curled like commas, their hair damp, their minds miles away. One of them is whispering a folk tale to another, something about a prince and a cypress tree that talks. You lean back, inhaling the damp warmth tinged with lavender oil, and marvel, again, at how many layers there are to comfort. Temperature is one thing, but so is memory, ritual, space designed for slowness. The wind tower here isn't just cooling the room, it's cooling the pace, and there's more to learn from it. You may have noticed already how these towers, these passive coolers, work best in silence. They don't clash with noise. They aren't meant for frantic lives. They're built for people who understand that rest isn't wasted time. The Persians understood that. They made their cities breathe. You trace your gaze upward again, following the curve of one dome to where a second, smaller tower perches like a birdhouse. A gentle hum emanates from it, a combination of wind and the faint moan of warm air escaping through narrow slits. You can almost imagine the sound turning into a lullaby. If someone put a microphone up there, Spotify would have a whole new ambient sleep playlist by now. And it's not just homes and bathhouses, by the way. In larger cities, even markets, had their own wind towers. That's right. Your favourite rug merchant might have been standing under a perfectly calibrated downdraft. Canopies flapped lazily above the stalls. Dried fruit and saffron didn't wilt under the sun's glare, and the breeze kept things just fresh enough to sell more pomegranates than you ever thought you needed. But you're not in a bustling bazaar right now. You're in this quiet, tiled dream space, where the ceiling drips geometry and the walls seem to hum in minor chords. You let your hand trail over the surface of a clay water jug, cool to the touch. The air from the tower brushes your neck again, and you realize you've settled into the exact spot where that breeze lands, by accident or by design. Someone clears their throat softly. You turn your head, half expecting a friend to be standing there, offering you tea. But no, just another dreamer, just another soul drifting through this labyrinth of wind and water, stone and steam. And you wonder, how many others have stood here, centuries apart, feeling the same gentle current? Did they think of love here? Of forgiveness? Of dinner? Or maybe like you, they simply let go. The wind takes care of the rest. You lie back, eyes closed now, cheek resting on a pillow that smells faintly of cedar. Through your half-sleep haze, the voice of a storyteller wafts in from another room. Something about a caravan lost in the mountains. Something about a woman who turned into wind and never came back. You listen, not for answers, just for the hush that follows. You stir gently, less like someone waking, more like a page being turned. The bathhouse fades behind you, and the cobbled streets of the Persian city open up once again, but this time you head not into homes or courtyards, but toward the lifeblood of it all, the qanats. Ah yes, the qanats, those ancient underground canals carved like veins beneath the surface. They don't make much noise. In fact, unless you're looking for them, you might never notice they exist. But paired with the wind towers, they form one of the cleverest cooling partnerships in architectural history. Picture it, a system of gently sloping tunnels, dug into the earth with almost absurd precision, channeling cold water from distant mountain springs. And now imagine that water meeting the warm, dry air, funneled down from a badgir, combining forces in a cool chamber before the air ever brushes your cheeks. Congratulations, you've got natural air conditioning, 2,000 years before anyone plugged anything in. You take a step toward one of these hidden treasures. The opening isn't grand. It's just a square hole beside an old fig tree, shaded by a patch of wall that's somehow always cool, even in midsummer. A stone staircase descends into dimness, and the air changes as soon as you step down. It's cooler, sharper, as if the earth itself took a breath just for you. Down below, the walls sweat faintly. The floor is smooth with time and water, and somewhere in the distance, you hear the hush of a current, constant, steady, like someone whispering a lullaby they've known since birth. This is the heart of the system. The lungs are the wind towers, but the qanat, that's the pulse. Together, they form a thermal loop, drawing hot air down, cooling it with contact from moist underground passages, and pushing it up again, refreshed. Some homes even built their basements directly over these qanat tunnels, transforming them into subterranean oases. Historians still argue whether the earliest wind towers were intentionally connected to qanats, or if that integration came centuries later. Either way, you can't deny the quiet genius of it. Two invisible systems collaborating in complete silence. Above ground, the air moves. Below ground, the water travels. And in between, you, just standing here like a curious time traveler in sandals. You brush your fingers along the stone arch and notice a niche carved into the wall, holding what appears to be an ancient clay cup. Maybe once, someone used it to take a drink. Or maybe it was placed there ceremonially in respect of the water. Either way, it feels like a gesture of thanks. It's not hard to see why Persians treated water as sacred. After all, you're in the desert. Every drop has journeyed across mountains and memories just to get here. Every degree of coolness in the air is a triumph of patience, geometry, and knowing how to listen to the land. You sit for a moment, knees drawn up, and close your eyes. The space hums faintly. It doesn't demand your attention, but it doesn't ignore you either. It just welcomes you. Like a soft bench in the shade. Like an old friend who doesn't ask how you've been. Back above ground, the connection becomes clear. You remember that home from earlier, the one with the sloped badgir and the faded curtain that fluttered like it had a secret. That tower may well be channeling air down over a qanat-cooled basement, making every corner of that modest space feel like an oasis. No machinery, no humming fans, just balance. Even wealthier estates, with their intricately tiled wind towers and sprawling gardens, depended on this duo. Qanats beneath the garden kept the roots moist. Wind towers above kept the tea drinkers from fainting in the heat. It's all so harmoniously unspoken, like a duet where both singers know exactly when to pause. And the most charming part? It's entirely invisible from the outside. The traveller passing by might think, mud walls, hot place. and keep going. But you, lucky dreamer, now know the city is alive with slow, secret movement. You head back up from the qanat, blinking, at the sunlight that feels suddenly friendlier. The air smells faintly of clay and mint. Somewhere, someone is pounding cardamom in a mortar. Elsewhere, a child is laughing at a dust swirl shaped like a lizard. And above you, still those towers, always there, always watching, not speaking, just breathing for the city. You reach up to shield your eyes and trace the silhouette of a badgir with your fingers, one that's curved at the top, almost like a ship's sail caught in a lull. It stirs something inside you. Maybe the wind. Tower is also stirring stories, coaxing them from the earth or from your own memory. Didn't you once have a grandmother who slept with the windows open all summer, insisting that a proper breeze could heal anything? You smile. Maybe she was right. You walk slowly now, letting the shadows stretch across your path like long, sleepy cats. The city isn't trying to impress you. It doesn't want a review. It just wants to keep being what it is, unbothered, wise, and cool in more ways than one. And you're welcome to stay as long as you like. The wind tower will make sure you're comfortable. You're still walking, the sun now tilting westward in the sky, casting soft amber light across the walls. The edges of buildings glow like they're remembering something. A cat stretches lazily on a low ledge, and in the distance, a door creaks, open with that musical kind of squeak only old hinges know how to make. This time, you're heading toward the edge of the city, not quite rural, but definitely quieter, where farms begin to flirt with neighborhoods, and domesticated life blurs gently into cultivated land. And here, where the pace is slowest, and the sky looks a little bit bigger, is where you discover something that feels more like a secret than a structure: the summer retreat. This isn't some opulent palace or flashy royal villa. It's what you might call a country house, Persian style. A place where families escaped the furnace of urban heat and let the countryside cradle them for a while. You step through a vine-covered gate, and there it is, a modest two-story home with a badgir that looks taller than the house itself. It's shaped a bit differently here, slimmer perhaps, more elegant, like it's stretching its neck toward the mountains in the distance. And guess what? Even here, in the middle of fields and fruit trees, the wind tower does its work. In fact, some of the most beautiful designs were reserved for these seasonal retreats. Maybe because when people weren't working or hustling or surviving, they actually had time to appreciate the artistry of a gentle breeze. Inside, the air is cooler than you expected. Again, you pass through rooms with wide shuttered windows and ceilings painted with delicate floral patterns. A jug of water sits in the corner, beaded with condensation. A lazy breeze drifts through, a lattice window, mixing the scent of wild thyme and clean laundry left to dry under a mulberry tree. It feels earned, somehow. Like the breeze isn't just a weather event. It's a gift you receive only after traveling a certain distance in both space and mood. Historians still argue whether these countryside wind towers were used more for comfort or food storage. That's right. Some of them cooled underground larders instead of living spaces, allowing things like yogurt, milk, and even pickled vegetables to stay fresh without spoiling. A little bonus coolness while you nap. You wander into a side room and find a deep niche carved into the wall, a sort of pantry, naturally ventilated. Imagine how satisfying it must have been to pull a bowl of chilled melon out of that space on a hot afternoon. The juice sticky and sweet, your face cooled by a breeze that had traveled 20 miles just to find you. And now, just to complete the moment, let's add a fun fringe detail. Some rural homes place tinkling wind chimes inside the shafts of their wind towers. Not for superstition or fashion, but simply for joy. You'd lie back after dinner, belly full of lentils and flatbread, and let the wind sing you to sleep through copper bells and clay pipes. Basically, nature's ASMR. You linger in the retreat, for a while longer, noticing how the space seems to invite you to be slow. There are no sharp corners, no tight turns, just archways and rugs and light filtered through grapevine trellises. You feel your own breath deepen, your own pulse match the lazy rhythm of the air. And then you hear it. That voice again. Distant, maybe from a neighboring home. Someone calling a child in for supper. A chicken clucks in protest. A goat bleats once and gives up. And through it all, the wind tower keeps drawing cool air down into the heart of this sleepy sanctuary, drawing your eyelids heavier, your thoughts lighter. You settle onto a cushion by a wall and feel the air brush your cheek, just the faintest hello from above. You imagine yourself living here, maybe in a much simpler time, when cooling off didn't involve apps or remotes or instructions in 6 languages, just the sun, the stone, and the wind, and maybe a fig or two. The sun slips further, now kissing the tops of wheat, stalks and fig trees. The walls turn golden, and you realize you haven't heard a mechanical sound in ages. No cars, no fans, no buzzing of wires or fridges or phones, just the breeze. You close your eyes again and picture it all running like a silent machine. The Qanat far below you, pulling water across the desert like a loyal servant. The Badgir above you, tall and stoic, catching the breath of the mountains and feeding it to the home. And you, in between, held gently by both. The Persians never rushed their summers. Why would they, when they had towers that turned heat into sleep? The last thing you hear before drifting into a half-dream is a soft flutter. Maybe a curtain, maybe a bird, maybe the tower whispering something you're too relaxed to decode. You'll remember it later. Maybe, or maybe not. The air is cooler now, more a sigh than a breeze, as if the whole countryside is winding down along with you. That countryside retreat lingers in your mind like a pleasant aftertaste, and as you leave its shady comfort, you step into the broader patchwork of Persian urban planning. You're not going to a specific home this time. Instead, you wander through the slow, deliberate geometry of the city itself. Not the palace, not the bazaar, just the connective tissue, the quiet streets, the alleys, the rooftops where children used to chase pigeons and old men squinted at stars. And what's remarkable is that everywhere you look, those Badgirs are there, like stone sentries perched above the skyline, catching winds not for themselves, but for the people below. It's a whole ecosystem of air, designed long before anyone had the nerve to say sustainable cooling. You pass a row of tall mud brick walls. Each one hides a courtyard, of course, but you know now what else they likely hide. Narrow wind, towers, almost modest compared to the showier ones near wealthier homes, yet no less effective. These aren't meant to impress, they're meant to work. And here's something mildly delightful. In older cities, wind towers weren't always standalones. Some were built in tandem, like tag team wrestlers, one facing the prevailing summer, wind, the other positioned to create a gentle vacuum when winds change direction. 2 towers, one goal, to keep the inside bearable. You pause at a junction where 5 alleys meet, and above them all, Badgirs lean like old friends deep in conversation. Some are missing a few bricks, some are cracked like dry earth, but still, they stand, still catching the breath of the desert and passing it on. Now, here's where things get deliciously peculiar. Some towns built their wind towers without houses. Yes, you heard that right. Standalone Badgirs, connected to public underground reservoirs or water cisterns. The cool air they funneled kept the water from stagnating. So even when you weren't in a private home, you could walk into a public space, dip a cup into a communal basin, and feel a waft of coolness wrap around your wrist. Imagine that, a public drinking fountain that air conditions you. Historians still argue whether this system was strictly for cooling, or if it also had spiritual undertones, maybe tied to Zoroastrian notions of purity and the sacredness of water. Either way, it worked. And it felt intentional. Like someone had cared enough to ask, how can we make this feel better for everyone? You start noticing patterns now. The orientation of the streets, the height of certain towers, the way some rooftops are sloped, channeling air downward towards shaded sitting areas. It's as if the entire city was designed not just for beauty or defense, but for breath. At one quiet corner, you find yourself looking at a collapsed tower, its stones scattered like the bones of a forgotten giant, And yet, even in ruin, it speaks. You can tell it once caught the wind. You can feel it. And just when you think the city has offered up all its cooling secrets, you find something borderline absurd. A narrow shaft built into the side of a camel stable. Yes, even the animals had ventilation. Apparently, even camels deserve a summer breeze. You step closer, and sure enough, the air is cool. Musty, yes, but also strangely kind. You picture a grumpy camel, swaying in the dark, enjoying his little slice of air-conditioned comfort, while the world outside baked in the sun. This might be your new favorite detail. Everything about the city's layout seems to hum in quiet, harmony with the wind. There's no loud boasting, no shiny logos or ad campaigns, just timeless collaboration between architecture and atmosphere. And you can't help but marvel at how this wasn't accidental. These weren't random design choices. This was intelligence sculpted into clay and mud brick. Knowledge passed down in blueprints and bricks, in shadows and whispers. You make your way toward a public square now, modest in size, where families might have gathered after dusk. A place for storytelling, for melon slices and slow laughter. Maybe someone played a reed flute under a wind tower just like the one above you, the notes lifted upward, twirling around inside the shaft before escaping into the stars. You sit on a step and look up. The tower is perfectly still, but you feel it working. It has no ego, no buttons. It doesn't beep when you press it. It doesn't track your usage or ask for a firmware update. It just is. And somehow, that's enough. You rest your elbows on your knees and let the breeze, faint as it is, wash across your skin. There's something almost holy about it. A breath that began high in the Zagros Mountains, touched the tops of poplar trees, slid down over the rooftops and landed right here, on you. You close your eyes and smile. Your feet have learned the rhythm of this place now. You don't walk, so much as drift, carried along by the subtle logic of shadows and scent. Today's part of the journey takes you to a place most travelers would skip, but not you. You're headed underground. Well, sort of. You duck under a low archway into a quiet alley whose walls lean in like two conspirators trading secrets. Beneath your sandals, the path begins to slope downward, just a little at first. You descend slowly, the light behind you fading into a golden hush. Ahead, a door set into the stone. You push it open. Coolness greets you instantly, like a welcome home hug from someone who never rushes. You're inside a sardab, a Persian basement chamber built specifically for the summer months. Sardab literally means cold place, and you can feel why. It's dark, but not gloomy. Quiet, but not silent. And despite the heat you left behind at the surface, here it's several degrees cooler. Naturally, effortlessly. The walls are thick, stone, mud brick, maybe even lined with lime plaster, and they hold back the outside world like a stubborn doorman. The ceiling curves like an upside-down bowl, drawing the eye and the air upward toward, you guessed it, a wind tower. The Badgear pokes through the ceiling here like a forgotten chimney, but instead of smoke, it funnels down streams of moving air. That movement creates a gentle suction, pulling hot air up and drawing cooler air from shaded corridors below. A subtle, constant dance of pressures and temperatures. You take a few steps further in and notice how cleverly the room is arranged. No sharp edges, benches carved right into the walls, niches for oil lamps, even in a place meant for midday rest. It's all been thought through. This is where you would have napped, chatted, or sipped cold water from a ceramic jug, if you'd lived here centuries ago. Here's a quirky gem for your sleepy brain. Some sardabs were equipped with perforated jars of water called zulf, placed right in the airflow of the wind tower. The breeze would pass over the jug's damp surface, cooling the air even more through evaporation. It's air conditioning, with a side of hydration. Historians still argue whether these jugs were purely functional or had symbolic roles, maybe linked to rituals of hospitality. After all, offering someone a chilled drink in the desert is practically a sacred act. You settle onto one of the low stone benches and close your eyes for a moment, letting your body adjust. The air smells faintly of earth, dried herbs, and old clay. You imagine someone dozing right here hundreds of years ago, their heartbeat slowing with the temperature, their dreams softened by wind whispers. This sardab probably belonged to a wealthier household, judging by its size. But even modest homes had their version. Some no bigger than a pantry, but still cool, still purposeful. The goal wasn't luxury, it was balance. And the best part, these rooms were often dug directly into the qanat system. Yes, those same underground water channels running like veins beneath the city. By placing a sardab near or over a qanat, you guaranteed a cooler microclimate. Even on the hottest day, the earth below remembered cooler times and shared that memory with whoever sought refuge. You explore a bit more, running your fingers along the grooved walls, noting the delicate hand-painted patterns fading in the corners, blue vines maybe, or cloud motifs. You picture a child sitting here on a summer afternoon, legs swinging, eating raisins while their grandmother fans herself slowly and hums an old tune. Some sardabs had a second exit, a sort of trap door back into the courtyard, mostly for ventilation. But others, they had secret reading nooks. That's right. Cool, quiet corners designed not just for survival, but for solitude. You'd take your poetry scroll, your lemon drink, and your softest pillow, and you'd disappear for hours. And now, so do you. The breeze from the wind tower above shifts slightly, stronger now, as if the structure is exhaling with more conviction. You wonder where the air is coming from. Maybe from a distant orchard, maybe from the edge of a salt flat, or maybe, just maybe, from the same mountain pass it's traveled since the first sardab was dug. The walls don't answer your questions. They don't need to. They just hold the cool. They just are. You lean back, letting your shoulders soften into the wall. You're not quite asleep, not quite awake. The line between the two feels like a silk thread, a thread strung through time and tied gently around this moment. Down here, the heat is irrelevant. The noise of the outside world, inconsequential. Even the sun feels like a distant rumor. What matters is the flow of air above you, ancient and constant, sculpted by hands who never rushed, never guessed. They just built, quietly, brilliantly. You listen, not for voices, but for the low hush of air moving through stone. It's the sound of patience, of design that doesn't show off, just works. And as you drift, your last thought before the day folds itself into evening is this. It's not the size of the room, it's the cleverness of the breeze. You re-emerge from the sardab like someone stepping out of a cool dream, blinking slowly in the bronze light of early evening. The sun hasn't quite given up yet, but it's softer now, less tyrant, more torchbearer. The city stretches around you, its rooftops shimmering like tired scales on a desert lizard. And above them, a skyline prickled with bargears. But today, you're not just admiring their silhouettes. You're headed to one of the unsung heroes behind their success, the qanats. If wind towers are the lungs of Persian cooling, qanats are the arteries. And what a labyrinthine marvel they are. You stroll toward the city's outskirts, where dusty goat paths become less certain, and the ground has the sort of tilt that hints at secrets underneath. The locals here walk carefully, not because of danger, but because they know they're stepping over a living thing. A qanat begins high in the hills, where a well pierces the earth like a surgical needle into a cool vein. Water gathers, slow, persistent, and is channeled into a gently sloping tunnel that runs underground for miles. No pumps, no pressure valves, just angle and gravity, working hand in hand like old musicians who don't need to speak. And the slope is no accident. Too steep and the tunnel floods or collapses. Too shallow and the water stagnates. The ideal grade? About 1 meter per 1,000. Imagine measuring that across 10 kilometers with medieval tools. Imagine digging it, meter by meter, lying on your back in the dark, whispering curses at rocks, older than time. Historians still debate just how ancient these systems really are. Some say 3,000 years, others push it further. What's agreed is this: Persia perfected them, and they lasted. Some qanats are still in use today, slinking under schools and traffic lights and living rooms without anyone really noticing. You find one of the old vertical shafts now, just a small circular pit edged with stone. It looks innocent enough, but it drops for meters, straight down into shadow. It's both maintenance hatch and air vent, used by workers called mukanis, professional qanat diggers. Not a job for the faint of heart or short of rope. You peer over the edge and feel a breath of cool air rise up to meet you. It smells faintly of minerals, like water that's passed through time instead of pipes. And here's your weird, delightful tidbit. Some of these tunnels were built with curves, not for aesthetics, but to avoid old tree roots, buried ruins, or rock layers that just didn't cooperate. So somewhere under your feet, a stream might be corkscrewing elegantly around a fossilized fish. The best part? Fish. The best part? These qanats often ran directly beneath homes, where they did triple duty: cooling sardabs, irrigating gardens, and providing drinking water. Picture that, a single invisible system doing more than your modern utilities on their best day. And no monthly bill. You walk beside an old stone channel now, one that used to carry qanat water to a public wash house. The channel is dry, but the stones are smooth, worn by centuries of fingers, buckets, and sleepy domestic gossip. You can almost hear the murmurs, the splashes, the laughter, as women washed linens and children dunked their feet to escape the sun. What's truly charming is how the placement of qanats influenced everything. The city grew around them. Markets cropped up where water was closest. Trees were planted according to underground flow. Even wind towers were aligned to pull cool air across qanat shafts, mixing water-cooled breezes with dry desert drafts. A poor man's air conditioning, yes, but one that worked beautifully. You reach a garden now, long abandoned, its gate leaning sideways like a tired shoulder. But the layout's still there. Stone basins, little runnels carved to direct water. If you squint, you can almost see the splashes again. Feel the moisture in the air. And here's something scholarly debates still wrestle with. Did the earliest badgirs evolve directly because of qanats? Were they built to enhance what the underground already offered? Or were they parallel discoveries, eventually braided together by clever architects with no time for patents? You'll never know for sure. But you do know this. When the wind meets the water in these old systems, the temperature drops dramatically. Not by degrees, by sensation. You feel it in your bones. The kind of cool that makes you exhale a little slower. Sleep a little deeper. You sit now on a stone once used to balance laundry baskets. It's warm under you, but the breeze carries something else. A softness, a weightlessness. Like the earth itself is exhaling. You can imagine being here in the 10th century. No noise but footsteps and bird calls. No urgency, but getting the melon slices out before the breeze dies. You picture a man leaning over this very qanat, saying a prayer, not out of piety, but out of gratitude for the water that never boasts, only gives. You close your eyes. Beneath, the qanat still runs, probably half choked with silt, but flowing nonetheless, like a desert whisper that refused to go silent, like memory made liquid. You linger by the old qanat channel for a while, letting its ghost water cool your thoughts, then rise slowly, knees cracking just a little. A reminder that even time travelers aren't immune to long days. The sky is beginning to bruise with evening, and lanterns are being lit across the city like tiny promises. But tonight, you're not returning to the wind towers just yet. No, now you're headed into the bazaar, not for shopping, but to see. how this old network of airflow and coolness was extended into the beating heart of urban life. After all, it's one thing to chill a quiet room. It's another to keep a market full of people, spices, donkeys, and gossip from turning into a sun-baked pressure cooker. The entrance arches over you, tiled with blue and turquoise, faded from the centuries, but still striking. You step inside and are immediately struck by the shift in temperature. It's not cold exactly, but noticeably cooler than the sunlit streets behind you. The air moves, slowly, silently, but it moves. Here's the trick. Many Persian bazaars were built with climate in mind, not just commerce. The walkways are narrow, the ceilings vaulted, the walls thick. Some even had openings high above, not skylights exactly, but wind catchers integrated into the bazaar's roof, allowing hot air to rise and escape, while cooler breezes were drawn in. It's wind tower logic applied horizontally. You wander deeper, the scent of cardamom and saffron curling through the air like polite ghosts. Sellers call out, but without urgency. They know the hour is growing lazy. Their stalls are cool from more than shade. Some are situated directly above qanats, with trickles of water running through mini channels carved into the floors. You spot one now, just a shallow groove along the stone, damp to the touch. A millimetre of water, but enough to drop the air temperature by several degrees. Here's a quirky little fact for you. Some merchants used suspended clay bowls filled with water in front of their stalls. As the breeze passed over the bowls, the air cooled slightly before reaching their space. The effect was minimal, but on a blazing summer day, minimal is the difference between a customer staying or bolting for shade. Historians still argue whether these micro-cooling tactics were inventions of the vendors themselves or standardized across bazaars by city planners. Either way, they worked. This wasn't just economic architecture, it was environmental choreography. You pause beside a spice seller who's closing up for the day. His scale is brass and well used, his fingers stained red from dried rose petals. He hums under his breath as he packs up, unbothered by the residual heat. That's what living in sync with your city does. It removes the battle. You notice a peculiar design feature now. Many of the walls are angled slightly outward at the base, forming a subtle trapezoid. This isn't just a stylistic choice. Those sloped surfaces reduce the sun's direct hit during peak hours and help air funnel upward. The hot air rises, slips out through high vents, and is replaced by air pulled through side passages or, yes, even distant wind towers that feed the bazaar's core. It's a whole invisible system, one you never noticed until now. A chicken vendor waves you past, his coop empty, the straw swept. He gestures toward the ceiling, where a wooden panel spins lazily. Not a fan, at least not the electric kind. It's an old air paddle, once used to redirect breezes caught by the tower above. It creaks a little as it turns, but even that sound is soft, rhythmic, like an ancient metronome for a song nobody plays anymore. And here's a fringe tidbit. Some historians believe bazaars were designed to teach people to slow down. Not just physically, but mentally. The dim lighting, the coolness, the narrow passages, they encourage ambling, lingering, not rushing. It's commerce as therapy. Capitalism with a cool breeze. You turn a corner and find a tea stall that's still open. The owner nods as you pass, but doesn't speak. Just pours a cup of black tea into a small clay bowl and sets it gently on a carved stone ledge, once a shelf for ledgers, now a table for ghosts. You take a sip. It's hot, but it doesn't clash with the air around you. There's a balance, a peace. It's like the city is exhaling again, and this time, it wants you to be still. One more scholarly debate for your slowly unwinding brain. Some argue that the entire Persian concept of urban comfort came not from palaces or religious buildings, but from the bazaar. That the practical beauty of shade, airflow, and interaction here influenced everything from home design to garden planning. You lean back against the cool brick, and it holds you, not like a chair, but like a trusted acquaintance who says, "It's fine, stay a little longer." Above you, the wind tower breathes. Below you, a qanat hums. And around you, the day folds itself neatly into twilight. You close your eyes, just for a moment. And in that moment, the bazaar becomes a memory. Not yours, but someone else's. Someone who also wandered here long ago, paused at this very ledge, and realized the truest luxury isn't wealth, it's airflow. You leave the bazaar with a mind full of shadows and saffron, blinking back into the indigo evening. The air is finally soft enough to feel kind, brushing your skin like a promise kept. But tonight's not done with you yet. Now, it's time to visit a more intimate marvel. A traditional Persian courtyard home, one of those inward-looking sanctuaries where architecture and climate dance in perfect sleepy harmony. You turn down a quiet alley, so narrow your elbows nearly brush the walls, and come to a wooden door so unassuming you almost miss it. You knock. No one answers. But in this dream walk of history, doors often open themselves. You step inside. The noise of the street vanishes behind you. What greets you is quiet. Not silence exactly, but the hush of trickling water, rustling, vines, and the delicate clink of wind chimes hung from carved eaves. You're standing at the edge of a house, a shallow pool set at the center of the courtyard. Its surface catches the last light of the sky like melted opal. And here's your first mainstream fact. These courtyards weren't just decorative, they were engineering. The geometry of calm. 4 walls surrounding an open center, almost always built with a water feature and shaded trees, typically fig, pomegranate, or sour orange. The placement wasn't random. Each plant, each pebble, path, each tile was part of a larger scheme to tame the climate and cradle the soul. There's a badgir here too, shorter than the ones atop the city walls but still proud. Its base connects to a small underground chamber directly beneath the courtyard. When the wind passes through its vents and down its shaft, it's cooled by the humid air rising from the pool, then funneled through stone channels into the living spaces beyond. It's not just air conditioning, it's atmosphere. You wander slowly around the house, noticing how the house hugs it protectively. The rooms all open inward, not out to the street. This wasn't a culture of window shopping. Privacy was prized, and the best views were reserved for the residents themselves. It made homes feel like secrets worth keeping. And here's the quirky detail you didn't expect. The pool often doubled as a mirror for the stars. People would sit here at night, sip tea, and watch the sky reflect on the surface. Clouds drifting upside down, moonlight wobbling in gentle ripples. Some poets swore it helped them write better verses. Others just liked the fish. Speaking of which, yes, goldfish were common in Persian houses. Not for decoration, but to prevent mosquitoes. A quiet security team, flitting beneath, the water lilies, eating larvae and bringing luck. You find a seat on the cool stone edge. Behind you, a niche in the wall holds an oil lamp that once flickered beside whispered stories. Ahead, the wind tower's shaft exudes a faint but unmistakable chill, as if the house itself is sighing in relief. It's worth noting, historians still argue whether badgirs in homes like this were status symbols or simply practical necessities. Some say the elaborate ones were meant to show off a family's wealth. Others insist that even modest homes had them, because nothing says luxury like a nap without sweat. You get up, padding quietly through the arched doorway into the E1, a semi-open porch space that faces the courtyard. The ceiling here is vaulted, painted with faded floral patterns in blues and burnt ochres. The breeze from the wind tower flows through, bending the flame of a tiny lantern left burning in the corner. This was the spot for evening lounging. You, imagine, the halfway point between indoors and out. Too hot for the enclosed room? Sit here. Too bright in the sun? Sit here. Want to gossip without waking grandma? Definitely sit here. And now you're inside the living quarters proper. The walls are thick, sometimes over a meter, and designed to insulate, not impress. The floor is soft beneath you, covered in worn kilim rugs and scattered cushions. The air is still cool, still fresh. This home was built before fans. before plugs and thermostats and air ducts. Yet here you are, comfortable, almost drowsy. You pass through a narrower hallway and into the sardab. Yes, another one. Each house had its own after all. This one's a little deeper, a little darker. The Badgir's shaft feeds directly into it, and beneath your feet, the Qanat murmurs. Again, your old companion from the city's edge, still flowing, still faithful. You remember what we said earlier. It's a system. Not just a tower here, a tunnel there, but an ecosystem of temperature, light, and air. Persian homes weren't designed in isolation. They breathed with the landscape. The materials, mud brick, plaster, wood, weren't just traditional. They were intentional, heat-resistant, cheap, locally sourced, and endlessly repairable. And here's your open scholarly debate of the evening. Some experts now argue that these ancient designs were early models of sustainable housing, centuries before eco-friendly was a buzzword. Others caution against romanticizing the past. After all, not everyone had a wind tower or a quiet courtyard. But the principles, those endure. You lie back on the sardab's ledge for a moment, watching dust swirl in a shaft of moonlight. Somewhere above, a breeze catches the Badgir just right, and the air around you shifts. Subtle, cool, kind. This isn't luxury the way we think of it now. There's no air freshener, no thermostat app, no scented candle trying to imitate a forest. But this feels more human, more forgiving, more like home. The night deepens and the air grows gentler still. You ease back through the courtyard, past the dark pool now mirroring constellations with lazy confidence. As you step once more into the alley, you feel the temperature shift, just slightly warmer outside the embrace of that perfectly calibrated home. You're heading now to a place many travelers never notice. It's not a tower, not a palace, not a garden. It's the bathhouse. Yes, public hammams weren't just for scrubbing off a long day's dust. They were part of the environmental intelligence of Persian city life. And unsurprisingly, wind towers and water tunnels found their way here too. After all, even in a space dedicated to steam and heat, comfort was an art form. You duck through a low arched entrance and descend 3 shallow steps into the cool, stone-clad antechamber. A lantern flickers overhead, its flames steady in the stillness. Around you, alcoves for undressing, old marble benches, and one forgotten slipper that somehow survived time. Here's a mainstream fact. Persian bathhouses were often semi-subterranean, partly underground to insulate against the desert's extremes. Thick walls held in heat when needed, but also, with clever design, vented it when desired. In fact, many hammams had their own mini badgirs, strategically positioned above the hot rooms. Why? To pull out excess steam and refresh the air, not just for comfort, but for health. Bacteria love stagnant heat. Ancient Persians didn't know microbes by name, but they knew what a well-ventilated room felt like. You drift toward the warm room, where the tiles beneath your feet grow pleasantly hot. Not scalding, just soothing. There's a faint echo in here. An old man clearing his throat maybe, or your own footsteps remembering how to be grand. The air is thick but breathable, thanks to a vented dome high above. The trick? Many of these domes had star-shaped openings, tiny, angled holes that let light in but heat out. And they created a chimney effect, drawing warm, moist air upward as fresh air crept in from lower vents or connected qanats. You sit where someone once did, knees pulled up, back against warm stone. There's no water running right now, but you imagine it. The gentle splash of a copper bowl, the slosh of bathers rinsing off dust and gossip. Conversations here weren't just about hygiene. They were social, spiritual, and sometimes political. And here comes your quirky tidbit. Some hammams kept snow in shaded storage pits during winter to mix with water for a cooling rinse in summer. That's right, snow. In the desert, preserved in deep cellars or ice pits called yakchols, shaded by wind towers that kept temperatures just low enough to delay melting. It was, essentially, the world's first chilled towel service. You stretch your legs and peek into the hot room. A domed chamber lined with glazed tiles, some still intact. The air here is thick, fragrant with the ghost of eucalyptus or dried herbs once tossed onto hot stones. You can almost feel your pores relaxing, centuries too late. Historians still argue whether bathhouses were primarily about cleanliness or community. Were they spiritual spaces linked to ritual purification, or secular sanctuaries from sand and heat? The answer, as usual, is yes. They were both. And here's the thing. Wind towers weren't just slapped on top. They were integrated into the bathhouse layout. Some connected directly to subterranean water channels, pulling cool air over running water before piping it into the dressing rooms. Others worked in reverse, siphoning steamy air out of the building entirely. You wander into the sardab of the hammam. Yes, even here, the cold room made an appearance. A place to cool down slowly after a steam, letting your heart rate dip and your thoughts meander. The walls are rough stone, the floor smooth and damp. You find a groove carved into one wall where oil jars once sat, their contents rubbed onto aching muscles or cracked heels. And now, a detail you might have missed. Persian bathhouses had sound design. Seriously, the curved ceilings, the tiled niches, they weren't accidental. They created natural acoustics, so voices echoed softly, music carried gently, and water sounded fuller than it was. It made the experience feel larger, more dreamlike. You settle against the wall, feeling your back absorb centuries of stories. Steam still clings faintly to the air, even in this memory of a place. And above you, high above, the wind tower exhales, just barely. One scholar once called it breath architecture, the way these ancient buildings didn't just stand, but breathed. In through wind towers, out through domes, across water, under stone. A living rhythm, unspoken but ever present. You rise slowly, stretching out the sleep in your shoulders, and make your way back up the steps into the night air. Once more, the stars are brighter now, the streets quieter. The hammam, like the home, like the bazaar, fades behind you, not closed, just complete. There's something deeply human about it all, not in the bricks or the blue tiles, but in the choices, the hundreds of tiny decisions made to keep life bearable in a hot, dry world. And tonight, in this dream walk of wind and stone, you've started to feel those choices, not just see them. The stars guide your path now, the kind of velvet black sky you only get in the absence of modern light. A breeze lifts the edge of your sleeve. It's cooler again, not because of the desert nightfall alone, but thanks to something even older and quieter still. The buried veins of the Qanat system, humming gently beneath your feet. Tonight, you're chasing one. Not the entrance this time, nor the urban spout. You're heading toward the real workhorse of this ancient operation, the mother well. You trudge out beyond the old city walls, past scrubby hills and olive groves faded to shadow. The ground is dimpled with what, at first glance, look like animal burrows or sinkholes. But step closer, and you'll see they are perfectly round, aligned like a string of cosmic beads. These are vertical shafts, access points dug at intervals along the underground Qanat tunnel. Each one connects the surface to the cool, dark artery below. It's not glamorous. There's no mosaic, no carved niche, just dust, rope, and darkness. But this, the mother well, was the lifeblood of everything you've seen so far. Here's your mainstream fact. Qanats start at high elevations, where water seeps naturally from underground aquifers. Workers, called mekanis, would dig the mother well down to that water table, sometimes over 300 feet deep. From there, they carved a gentle sloping tunnel by hand, stretching for miles toward the city, ensuring a constant gravity-fed stream of cool, clean water. And the gradient had to be precise, too steep, and the water would rush and erode, too shallow, and it wouldn't flow at all. No calculators, No GPS, just sticks, intuition, and a whole lot of patience. You lean over the shaft, peering into the darkness. The drop is dizzying, but the air drifting up is cool and pure, like it's never known sunlight. The mechanis, by the way, they were specialists, respected, but often anonymous. Entire families passed the craft down for generations. It was hard, dangerous work. Cave-ins were real, so were gas pockets. Yet many refused to modernize, insisting that machines didn't listen to the earth the way human hands did. A quirky belief, maybe. But when you're 40 meters underground with a chisel, you want to trust your instincts. You sit on the edge of a shaft, not too close, and look out over the gentle rise and fall of the landscape. This land is not lush, but it's alive. Thanks to these tunnels, these shadows, water is carried beneath your very toes like a secret. Here's something else. In many places, trees were planted along canats, not just for shade, but to mark the route and benefit from the higher water table. You might spot a line of cypress or plane trees in an otherwise barren field, following the arc of an invisible river. It's not just clever, it's poetic. And here's your scholarly debate for the night. There's still argument over how old the Kanat system truly is. Some say 2,500 years. Others push it back to 3,000 or even earlier, claiming it began with the earliest Iranians or neighboring civilizations. But everyone agrees they worked, and they still work. In parts of Iran today, villagers still draw drinking water from ancient kanats dug centuries ago. You move carefully now, stepping between the shafts, following the rise and fall of the land. Each vertical well served not only as a vent for air and maintenance access, but also helped regulate pressure inside the tunnel. Without them, the water might stagnate or overflow. With them, it flowed like breath, steady, life-giving, just beneath the surface. And now, the quirky part. Mukhanis were said to develop an almost bat-like sense of spatial orientation underground. With no light, no GPS, and little margin for error, they used echo, air temperature, and the taste of the earth to guide their picks. There are even stories, half fable, half truth, of old masters who could hear where the water wanted to go. You crouch down and scoop a handful of dry soil, let it fall through your fingers. Somewhere below, a tunnel inches its way toward an oasis, or a farm, or a house with a wind tower sighing quietly on its roof. You realize something. You're walking the mirror of a river, an underground twin to all the architecture, marketplaces, and hammams you've visited. Wind towers pull, kanats push, and together they create a breath, an inhale of coolness, an exhale of heat. You don't see that kind of design anymore. The wind changes again, blowing uphill, and for a moment it carries a strange scent. Not unpleasant. Earthy, metallic, like water on stone. Maybe it's your imagination, or maybe it's the mother well, breathing up to thank you for the visit. You rise, brush off your hands, and begin to walk back toward the glow of the old city, now no more than a sleepy outline against the stars. One more gust of cool air trails behind you like a whisper. Back inside the city, your steps slow naturally as the stone streets return beneath your feet, smooth from centuries of sandals, hooves, and the occasional runaway goat. The breeze remains gentle, guided and shaped not by accident, but by layers of human wisdom. You feel it swirl near your ankles, brushing past doorways and skimming rooftops before vanishing into the sky. But tonight, your curiosity pulls you in a different direction, upward. You're going to climb one, yes, an actual wind tower, or at least the remnants of one. It stands at the edge of the old merchant quarter, where tall mud brick buildings crowd together like whispering neighbors. The badgir before you isn't pristine. Part of it leans slightly. Birds have colonized its upper tier. But it's still elegant, still proud. You step through a narrow door at its base, ducking instinctively as you enter the hollow base shaft. This isn't just a chimney, remember. It's a full-blown air conditioning system, You're standing inside ancient climate control, designed centuries before electricity dared show up. Here's your mainstream fact. Wind towers typically had 4 open sides, each facing a cardinal direction. The idea? Catch any wind, no matter its origin. Inside, the tower was divided by vertical fins or walls that directed the breeze downward into the living space below. The best part, even if the air outside was hot, the tower cooled it using internal shade, narrow channels, and evaporative methods. And in some designs, get this, the tower could be reversed. If the wind wasn't blowing, hot indoor air would rise naturally, get caught by the tower's design, and escape upward, creating a gentle suction that pulled in cooler air from below, a kind of passive lung. You reach a landing midway up, where there's just enough space to sit. Light filters in through a series of small, angled slits. Air intakes that once channeled the breeze like a lazy river. From here, you can look across the rooftops and see a dozen other towers rising like silent sentinels. Some are square, others octagonal. Each one was customized for the building it crowned. There's no one-size-fits-all blueprint here, just thoughtful adaptation. Historians still argue whether the wind tower design originated in Persia or was imported from neighboring Mesopotamia or Egypt. Some say it was born of Persian genius. Others point to earlier forms in Babylonian ruins. Still others argue that form and function co-evolved across dry climates, each culture tweaking the idea until it worked just right. Wherever it came from, the Persians perfected it. You climb a little higher, to a cramped platform just beneath the tower's crown. The air here is cooler than expected. It smells of dust, lime, and something faintly sweet, maybe dates ripening, on a rooftop below. You notice something peculiar, small ceramic jars embedded in the plaster along the inner walls. Their openings point downward, toward the shaft. What on earth? Well, here comes your quirky tidbit. Some wind towers had resonance jars built into their design. These jars weren't just decorative. The theory goes that they may have helped stabilize air pressure or even reduce the howling of strong winds, a sort of ancient acoustic dampener. Others argue they served spiritual purposes, capturing bad air or warding off spirits. There's no consensus, but they're there, unmistakably, silent, sealed, and mysterious. As you crouch by one, the tower shudders faintly in the wind. Not a creak of instability, but a low hum, like the building is remembering something. You settle against the wall, resting your head. You think about the family who once lived below. Did they lie awake like this on warm nights, letting the Badger's breath soothe their skin? Did children sneak up here when no one was looking, pretending to be sky gods or air spirits? The sky through the open slits is ink dark now, with only a few lanterns still glowing in the city below. You feel higher than you are, not just physically, but lifted, like the architecture itself is carrying you. The breeze picks up for a moment, and you feel it sweep through the tower, cool, precise, whispering past you with such softness that it takes a second to realize this is working. Still, after hundreds of years, the Badger is still doing its job. And you're its guest. You close your eyes and listen to the wind, to the quiet, to the ancient technology breathing in sync with the stars. Just before you doze off entirely, you remember something small but strange. In some areas, wind towers were painted with herbal mixtures, a blend of lime and crushed plants believed to repel insects and bad luck. That's right. Natural pest control meets architectural flair, because when your walls are catching wind, they might as well catch good fortune too. You yawn, genuinely now, and begin the slow descent, your hand trailing the cool, curved wall. The air thickens slightly with each step like syrup after the breeze. You don't rush. You let the night take its time. The tower has waited centuries. It can wait a little longer for you. You're back on solid ground now, the city breathing its slow, ancient rhythm around you. But you're not headed for sleep just yet. There's one more experience your curious feet want to find. because wind towers weren't only for homes or palaces. Some of them cooled something far more fragile: food. Tonight, you wander into the shadowy edge of the city's once bustling icehouse district. Yes, you heard that right. Ice. In the desert. It's an absurd image, isn't it? But here you are, standing before a massive domed structure, round and sloping like an overturned bowl, built from thick mud brick and just slightly cracked with age. A pair of wind towers rise behind it like tall ears listening to the night. This is a yakchal, literally a place of ice. It's not exactly air-conditioned, but it's cleverer than any ice tray in your freezer. Your mainstream fact: the yakchal used a combination of evaporative cooling, underground storage, and seasonal ice harvesting to store actual ice and perishable goods year-round in desert cities like Yazd, Kerman, and Isfahan. These massive domes could be over 60 feet tall, tapering inward toward the top, with thick insulating walls made of a special mortar, clay, ash, egg whites, goat hair, and lime. Basically, the ancient version of triple glazed and weather sealed. And beneath the dome, a deep pit, often lined with ice cut from nearby mountains during winter and carted down by mule. Or, more shockingly, created on site during freezing. Desert nights using shallow open pools built beside the yakchal. That's right, ice made in the desert by letting shallow water freeze overnight and stacking the layers into storage every morning, and then preserved, sometimes for months, thanks to brilliant passive design. You shuffle forward into the structure. Inside it's dark, dry, and cool enough to make your arms prickle. The air is almost too still. Your footsteps echo softly, like you've stumbled into the ear canal of a sleeping god. Breathe in, earth, lime, faint traces of past cargo, fruit, cheese, maybe even rosewater sweets stored for summer weddings. Historians still debate just how much of the year these ice houses kept their contents frozen. Some argue the system only extended the melt by a few months. Others insist that clever placement, insulation, and shade allowed ice to last until the next winter, a full cycle of heat and cool managed without a single wire. You rest your hand on the thick wall. It's rough, dry, and colder than it has any right to be. The wind towers above, direct the desert breeze downward through vertical shafts, keeping the air moving just enough to delay spoilage. It's not cold in the modern sense. No air blast, no humming compressor, but it feels intentional, like the air has been told to behave. A quirky tidbit for you. Some Persian texts suggest that ice was flavored before storage, not just with fruit, but with herbs like mint and thyme. There are even records of elite families flavoring their stored snow with saffron, turning a luxury into a legend. Imagine opening a pit of ice in July and pulling out a chunk that smells like spring. You walk slowly around the base of the chamber, your footsteps muffled by packed dirt and straw. It's not hard to imagine laborers stacking cakes of ice here, hands chapped from contact, moving silently in the dark to avoid melting anything with their breath. Above, the dome tapers to a small opening, allowing warm air to rise and escape. This chimney effect, combined with the insulating earth, created a self-regulating system, part refrigerator, part meditation chamber. It's cool enough to make your thoughts slow down. In one corner, you find a stone ledge, half buried now, maybe once used for food prep or for sitting in the shade during the hottest parts of the day. You take a seat, let your body sink into the silence. Even here, under layers of brick and dust, the principles of the wind tower follow you. Coolness guided, not forced. Nature redirected, not fought. The world made livable, not conquered. You smile at the idea that all this, the breezes, the airflow, the soft hush of a storage pit, was managed by people who didn't own a single thermometer. And here's something to make your sleepy brain chuckle. Some of the oldest yakchals had guardians, not just to protect the ice, but to supervise the airflow. Their job was to listen to the wind, adjust external vents, and report any suspicious silence. Think of it like being a desert DJ for temperature vibes. You stay seated a while longer, letting your body take in the ancient engineering. No buttons, no fans, just air, stone, and time. The yakchal doesn't ask for anything, it just holds on, like an old friend keeping leftovers in the back of their mind. Eventually, you step back out into the night. It's warmer outside, of course, but the air still carries a slight freshness, the leftover memory of something cold. And as you glance back at the wind towers behind the dome, you realize these structures weren't built to impress. They were built to last. Not bad, considering they've been chilling out since before Caesar had sandals. You wander out from the shade of the yakchal, trailing your fingers along the cool outer wall, then into the sandy path winding between quiet homes. The streets are empty now. Just a lazy cat perched on a parapet, grooming itself like royalty, and the soft creak of a wooden window shutter that can't decide whether to stay open or closed. Your next stop, not a tower, not a dome, but something smaller, simpler, personal. Tonight, you're stepping inside a traditional Persian courtyard house, one of those old family dwellings that stretched over generations like well-worn rugs. This one's long abandoned, half swallowed by sand and time, but enough remains to whisper its secrets. As you enter the arched gate, you're greeted by a familiar sight. A rectangular courtyard, sunk below street level, with a shallow pool at the center. A few dry fig trees reach upward, toward a sky now heavy with stars. The wind tower above watches silently, its open slits angled like curious eyebrows. Your mainstream fact: these courtyards weren't just decorative, they were climate tools. The entire home revolved around managing heat. Sunlight was directed where it was needed, shade was stretched over everything else. The central pool, called a house, cooled the air by evaporation, while trees added oxygen and fragrant shade. And those walls around you, they weren't flat rectangles. They were thick, intentionally angled, often with small vents and deep-set windows, like living inside a clever cave. The badgear above caught wind, pushed it downward, passed it across the courtyard, and swept it through rooms. It was a full-cycle design. Air came in hot and left cooler, like a breath that had passed through a cool cloth. You step into one of the side rooms, where the air still smells faintly of stone and rosewater. Plaster peels from the ceiling in thin curls, but the bones of the place remain sound. You imagine where the corsi, the heated blanket table, might have sat in winter, where cushions lined the walls, where someone's uncle told the same 3 stories every evening while sipping sour cherry juice. And of course, you picture someone adjusting the wind tower's internal fins, opening or closing channels to control the flow. Yes, even in these homes, the wind wasn't just caught, it was guided. A game of inches and angles. Historians still argue whether homeowners learned this system from builders, or whether it was passed down like recipes. Was it technical knowledge or cultural instinct? It's one of those blurry lines between engineering and intuition, but it worked. That's the point. It worked beautifully. And here's a quirky tidbit for you. Some courtyard homes had wind chimneys for sound, designed to channel not just air, but noise. These narrow vents acted like old-school baby monitors, letting a mother in the kitchen hear a child playing outside without leaving her post at the stove. A domestic soundscape, wind-assisted. You sit on the low stone ledge surrounding the dried-up pool, running your fingers along its tiled edge. Pale turquoise tiles, cracked but not broken. Once, water would have shimmered here in the moonlight, catching the breeze and making the shadows dance. A natural fan and a free light show. You close your eyes for a moment and imagine a warm summer evening. Family members sprawled on cushions under the stars, listening to poetry, sharing fruit cooled in a clay jar submerged in the house. No electricity, no phone buzzing, just the rhythm of stories and wind. A dog barks faintly somewhere in the distance, and you crack one eye open. For a second, you imagine it's the past calling out, a merchant's hound sniffing the air for incoming spice caravans. You chuckle softly to yourself and lean back against the wall. The wind tower groans faintly above, a sleepy exhale. You're starting to understand its language now. The creak means a temperature shift. The hush means the breeze has changed. And that soft rustle down the flue, that's the night itself, slipping inside to get comfortable. You glance toward one of the upper balconies, half collapsed but still draped in traces of ivy. Someone once leaned there at dusk, hair damp from a clay water jug, waiting for someone else to return, waiting for news, or gossip, or just a reason to smile. The house around you hums, not literally, but in memory. You can feel the 1,000 breezes it once caught, the heat it defeated, the sighs it cooled. Eventually, you rise from the courtyard and move quietly back toward the gate. You don't say goodbye aloud, but something about the house thanks you anyway. For remembering, for noticing. As you step back onto the street, a gust lifts a little sand and sends it spinning into the air. You don't flinch. You're used to wind now. You trust it. And for just a second you wonder, if your own home had a wind tower, would you sleep better? Might be worth finding out. You're deeper into the city now, though city might be a generous term for what feels more like an extended labyrinth of crumbling walls, leaning minarets, and alleyways that coil like sun-drowsed snakes. The streets are almost empty, but your destination tonight is functional, in the most ancient sense. You've seen how Persians cooled their homes, stored their ice, and charmed their courtyards into breathing oases. But here's a twist in the tale. The wind tower had a secret side hustle, cooling water before it hit your lips. Yes, you're now headed toward one of the oldest forms of urban infrastructure that Persians engineered for survival, the Ab Anbar, a subterranean cistern built to store and cool drinking water, and naturally ventilated by its quiet companion, the badgir. From the outside, the Ab Anbar looks almost too plain to matter. Just a few low mounds, an arched entry, and rising beside it, those familiar vertical slits of a wind tower. But as you duck through the entrance, your sandals scraping gently on time-worn steps, you're hit with the sudden chill of descending underground. Your mainstream fact: many Persian cities were laced with these ancient water reservoirs, often dug below ground and protected by domed roofs and wind towers. These Ab Anbars weren't just clever, they were absolutely vital in keeping cities alive through scorching summers. Step by step, the air grows cooler. The walls are damp in places, etched faintly with names, dates, and doodles. Some old, some only a few decades worn. You wonder how many people took shelter here when the sun above turned cruel. How many dipped hands into the dark water, whispering thanks. At the bottom, you stand before a low wall, the Sada, and peek into the water chamber beyond. Still, dark, faintly reflecting the soft moonlight filtering in from slats above. And it's here you discover your quirky tidbit. Some Ab Anbars had water etiquette signs carved into their walls. Literally, rules about when to draw water, how to dip the vessel, and warnings like, "Don't wash your feet here, Ahmad." It's surprisingly relatable. Historians still argue whether these wind-cooled cisterns were modeled after earlier Mesopotamian systems, or if they were a homegrown Persian invention. But whatever their origin, they evolved into something uniquely suited for this land, something both deeply practical and unexpectedly poetic. The badgir perched above wasn't just cooling the air. It also created gentle negative pressure, drawing fresh air in through vents and pushing stale or humid air out of the water chamber. A passive filtration system without a single filter. You take a long breath, letting the cool air fill your lungs. There's a mineral scent here, a mix of clay and limestone. No chlorine, no plastic, just the purest kind of clean. In some larger Ab Anbars, there were ventilation tunnels that snaked under the city, connecting cisterns to qanats or underground aqueducts. The water traveled for miles beneath the earth, shielded from evaporation and sunlight, and arrived in town cooler than the air above. That's right. People had access to chilled water before most civilizations had even figured out plumbing. You lean over slightly, careful not to slip, and imagine the water's long journey. From distant mountains, through hand-dug tunnels, past silt traps, filtered by time and stone, until it ended up here, in this dark basin. And nearby, a simple cup, maybe made of copper or carved wood, hanging on a hook, refilled, reused, shared. You don't sip, of course. This is just a dream. But you let your imagination do the drinking. The water tastes faintly sweet, clean, kissed by wind and stone. A noise from above startles you, just a palm frond tapping the roof in the breeze. You chuckle at yourself. And then, because you've come to enjoy this little game of historical absurdity, you whisper, "Thanks, wind." The air stirs in response. Maybe. Or maybe your brain's just sleepy. You climb the steps again slowly, taking one last look at the Abba Ambar from the doorway. Behind you, centuries of breath wait in the stone. Cool, quiet, and ready to serve the next thirsty soul. As you step into the alley, the breeze returns, soft and insistent. And once again, the wind tower above has done its job. Not just cooling a structure, but preserving a story. Your sandals scuff along the path. The walls glow faintly in moonlight, clay absorbing and releasing the day's heat like the rhythm of a sleeping body. Somewhere nearby, a tired rooster flutters its wings, unsure of the time. You smile. Not everything needs to be efficient. And maybe, just maybe, your own thoughts feel a little lighter, a little clearer. Thanks to the air you just shared with ancient stone, you don't bother checking the time anymore. In a place where the wind tells you when to move and the shadows draw the schedule, clocks feel a bit extra. You're simply walking now, through silence, through history, letting your feet find their own rhythm on the dust-softened stones. And then, you pause. Ahead is a larger structure, not domestic, not hidden underground. This one rises proudly, if a little crumpled by age. Broad, arched entrances, a few faded tiles glinting like starlight, and above it not one but two wind towers. You've arrived at a Persian caravanserai, the ancient rest stop of the Silk Roads. But tonight, you're not here for the merchants, the camels, or even the spice-laced gossip whispered by firelight. No, you're here for the way these windy towers once cooled entire crowds of dusty, overheated travelers, and how, even in transit, the air was given priority. Your mainstream fact: caravanserais were essential for long-distance trade across Persia. Built about a day's journey apart, they offered shelter, food, stables, and most notably, cooling. Many featured wind towers positioned to maximize airflow in common rooms and central courtyards, often in tandem with fountains or small pools to drop the temperature. You step under one of the massive stone arches and into the courtyard. It's square, symmetrical, like the planners needed a bit of order in an otherwise unpredictable world. The wind towers on either side angle inward, like old sentries sharing secrets. The air is surprisingly fresh. You look up, and through the wind slats, you glimpse stars. The towers are still breathing, in their own quiet way. Historians still argue whether these structures were primarily designed by architects, or if master builders just copied what worked from one site to the next. Was it art, science, or a highly efficient game of historical trial and error? You drift through the space where camels once snorted and shuffled, where tired travelers probably dropped to the stone and muttered, "Thank the gods for shade." And above it all, the wind towers quietly hissed a welcome. Now for your quirky tidbit. Some caravanserais had secret compartments in their wind towers, where guards could listen in on conversations below, like ancient air-conditioned surveillance. You'd think twice about gossiping near the breezy alcove, lest some bored officer jot your name down on a dusty ledger. You wander toward one of the sleeping chambers. The room is plain, arched ceiling, alcove niches, worn mats still scattered, here and there like exhausted ghosts. But the air, still cool, still moving. You hold your hand up and feel it. A whisper of a breeze winding through an air channel that hasn't seen a merchant in centuries. You sit down, cross-legged, your back against the wall. The stone is smoother than it should be, worn by generations of travel-weary backs. You imagine a weary spice trader here, boots off, eating dates from a cloth pouch and watching the breeze stir the hem of his robe. In one corner, there's a small raised platform, likely once used for storytelling or announcements. You picture Someone standing there, voice lilting through the twilight, describing the wonders of far-off lands. The tale probably included dragons, golden cities, and slightly exaggerated camel races, all under the gentle watch of the wind tower above. And speaking of storytelling, here's one of your favorite historical what-ifs. Some scholars believe that certain Persian architectural inscriptions in caravanserais were actually poems about wind, as in the breeze wasn't just a tool, it was a muse. You lean back, eyes half-lidded, and pretend to hear it. The hum of a wind tower, the murmur of traders, the quiet splash of water in the pool, and the hiss of sand being dragged lazily across the floor. A lullaby in 5 parts. Outside, a donkey brays faintly, maybe imaginary, maybe not. You stand again, dusting yourself off, and wander back into the courtyard. The moon has shifted higher. The air is cooler now, sharper. One of the wind towers creaks gently, adjusting to the change, and you find yourself admiring it. Not just the function, but the attitude. These structures didn't just survive the elements, they partnered with them, welcomed the wind, channeled it, made friends with it. You pass under the archway again, back into the night. And just before leaving, you place one hand on the wall. The stone is warm from the day but cooling quickly, like a body exhaling tension. You whisper your thanks, not just to the builders, but to the air itself. It whispers back. You've grown used to this now. The breeze on your skin, the low rustle of ancient walls breathing out the heat of yesterday. At this point, the wind towers don't surprise you anymore. They feel like companions, old, reliable ones who never say much, but always show up with a soft sigh and the occasional sand-gritted joke. Tonight, you turn your steps towards something a bit experimental. Not every innovation lasts, after all, and not every architectural marvel gets the applause it deserves. Welcome to a peculiar moment in Persian engineering history, the era of decorative wind towers that didn't actually do anything. Your mainstream fact, by the late Safavid and into the Qajar periods, as Persian cities expanded and tastes shifted, some wind towers were built purely for aesthetic value. They looked the part, symmetrical vents, ornate tilework, towering height, but they didn't always function. Sometimes they weren't even hollow. Yep. You're standing before a grand 2-story home in Yazd, the kind that whispers wealth even through its worn facade. Atop the roof, a majestic badgir rises like a miniature fortress. But there's a catch. The air below isn't cool. It's stale. Still. The vents? Bricked up. Historians still argue whether these faux towers were symbolic status markers or simply architectural fashion statements that got out of hand. Was it a way to mimic the nobility's homes? A design trend gone rogue? Or just an excellent way to make your neighbors jealous? You push open a creaky wooden door and step into the entry hall. No whoosh of cool air, no gentle swirl, just dry silence and a few disgruntled dust motes. And now for your quirky tidbit. One Qajar-era diarist, clearly annoyed by a friend's home, wrote that its wind tower stood proud like a rooster but cooled no one but the pigeons. He may have been grumpy, or just honest. You wander through the house, admiring how the architecture almost makes up for its false advertising. The courtyard is lovely, though not shaded well. The water channel that might have helped with evaporation has long since dried up, and the ceiling vent that should connect to the tower? Completely sealed. You sit down for a moment on a tile bench, letting your imagination do the heavy lifting. Maybe the builder meant to connect the air channels. Maybe he ran out of money, or maybe he was just trying to impress someone at a dinner party. You picture the scene. Yes, darling, it's a full badgir, triple vented, imported bricks. Quite rare. Meanwhile, guests are sweating quietly into their silk robes, nodding, politely as someone opens yet another window. And here's a fun crossover. Some of these non-functional wind towers were later converted into storage spaces. That's right. Architectural cooling towers, repurposed to stash rugs, tools, or even pigeons. The wind's loss was the clutter's gain. You wander into a back room. This one has a small cupola overhead, possibly another attempt at passive ventilation. It's beautifully built, with filigreed latticework and shards of blue tile still clinging to the rim. You lean back to look up through it, and it's covered with a slab of wood. Blocked, closed, just like the tower. Still, there's something oddly comforting about this place. Maybe it's the honesty of failure, or at least the charm of near-miss ambition. Not every structure has to be a masterpiece. Some just have to try. And let's be honest, you've had your own projects that looked better than they worked. That flat-pack shelf, that ambitious sourdough phase, that yoga class you took once and pretended you'd totally go back to. So you forgive the house and its proud, empty wind tower. It meant well. Back outside, the real breeze returns to greet you, as if to say, "Nice try, friend. Leave the airflow to the professionals." You head down the alley, passing another rooftop silhouette of a badgear that may or may not actually do anything. You decide not to check. Let some illusions remain intact. And somewhere, in the stillness between night and dream, you wonder what someone centuries from now might say about your own home. Charming, but the AC never worked. You smile. Fair. Enough. You walk on. The house is thin. The walls grow older. Somewhere behind you, the wind tower silhouettes drift out of sight, like sails fading into a quiet sea. And ahead, a change of scene. Not urban, not quite rural. You're stepping into an older rhythm now. Slower, wiser. The kind of place where nothing is hurried and everything is dusty on purpose. Welcome to a Persian village, the kind that's existed in some form for over 1,000 years. Not a museum, not a ruin, just life, ongoing, with its very own low-rise wind towers still stubbornly catching every breeze that rolls in from the desert. Hills, your mainstream fact. Rural Persian settlements, especially in arid zones like Yazd and Kerman provinces, adapted wind tower designs on a smaller scale. These mini badgirs were often attached to storage rooms, food cellars, or communal spaces like tea houses, not just for homes. You pause outside a squat, sun-baked building. One story, whitewashed walls. A small square tower perches on top like a sleepy cat. It's asymmetrical and slightly off-center. But it works, because here's the trick. When you step inside, the air is immediately, refreshingly cool. Not icy, not artificial, but naturally right. The floor is dirt. The walls are thick adobe. The window shutters are painted the soft blue of lost lakes. And above, a shaft runs straight up to the badgear. No bricks, no ornaments, just physics, just old genius. You sit down on a folded rug in the corner and let your body sink. It's the kind of place where you drink tea so slowly, the cup gets lighter without you noticing. Historians still argue whether this small-scale wind tower model was designed by trained builders or just adapted generation by generation, passed down like a family soup recipe. Nothing written. Everything remembered, modified, tweaked, perfected. A village boy peeks in the doorway, curious. You smile. He disappears, then returns with a handful of dates and a clay cup of water. No words, just breeze, sharing, and a nod. It's the ancient contract of hospitality. No receipts necessary. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some regions, these small wind towers were customized for food preservation. Locals used them to cool yogurt, cheese, and even dried herbs. You could walk into what looked like a shed and find a delicate scent of rosewater and mint lingering in the walls. And speaking of herbs, some villagers hung bunches inside the windshaft to infuse the airflow with scent. Imagine a breeze that smells faintly of lavender, basil, or sumac. Kinda makes your plug-in air freshener feel like a try-hard, doesn't it? You lie back, a creak from the wooden rafters above. The wind hums through the shaft, soft and steady. You could almost fall asleep right here, if not for the rooster crowing from somewhere deeply unreasonable at this hour. You roll onto your side. A nearby wall displays a hand-painted tile, chipped, sun-bleached, but lovely. A verse in old Persian script, probably a prayer, or a weather forecast. Hard to say. The village seems suspended between eras. A boy with a smartphone walks past a donkey with bells on its harness. A metal satellite dish juts out beside a wind tower that hasn't changed in 300 years. And yet, it all works. No one's in a rush to replace the past. It's been good, to them. Outside again, you notice another tower, shorter, wooden framed. It's attached to a tiny mosque. The imam steps out, nods to you, and gestures to the tower as if to say, yes, it still calls the prayer room. You nod back, and as you wander out of the village, leaving behind the woven rugs, the sweet wind-dried herbs, and the soft whistle of air moving in handmade shafts, you carry the breeze with you. It's a quiet kind of triumph, isn't it? That something so simple, wind and stone and shadow, could shape not just buildings, but lives, could cool a room, preserve a meal, and offer rest to centuries of strangers. And now it's offered rest to you. The sky is velvet now, not quite black, not quite blue, just that rich in-between where stars hesitate before coming out in full force. You move more slowly now, not out of fatigue, but because the world around you seems to ask for quiet, for stillness. This is the last stop. The long arc of your journey through ancient Persia's cooling genius brings you here, the final twilight hours of the wind towers. Your mainstream fact: by the early 20th century, especially during Reza Shah's reign, Iran began to modernize rapidly. Concrete replaced adobe, glass windows replaced lattice, and electric fans and air conditioners began appearing in government buildings, train stations, and urban homes. The badgers, once vital and revered, began to fall out of use. You find yourself in a half-abandoned district on the edge of Yazd. The houses are a little more skeletal here. Some roofs have caved in. Others wear scaffolding like wooden crutches. And the wind towers, those proud, dusty guardians, now stand chipped and half forgotten. Still, the air stirs. It's faint, but it's there. You duck into a crumbling doorway. A once grand merchant's home, now hollowed by time. Inside, the floor is uneven, the scent of dry earth rich and intimate. The central courtyard is overgrown, but the bones of beauty remain. A drained fountain, a cracked tile mosaic of cypress trees, and high above, yes, there it is, the tower, broken, quiet, but open to the sky. A soft breeze filters down, brushing your face. Historians still argue whether the fall of wind towers was inevitable. Was it progress, or just a preference for convenience over poetry? Either way, by the mid-20th century, most new homes in Iran were being built without them, but some resisted. Architects, villagers, even eccentric urbanites who insisted on keeping their wind catchers functional. There's a term for it now: climate responsive architecture. But these towers had already been doing that for 1,000 years before the term existed. And here's your final quirky tidbit. Some contemporary Persian architects, especially those concerned with sustainability, have begun reintroducing badger-inspired elements into new designs. Malls, museums, and eco-hotels now feature passive airflow towers disguised as skylights or modern installations. The breeze may wear sleeker clothes now, but it hasn't stopped whispering. You linger in the courtyard. A cat darts across the tiles. A broken pot rattles faintly in the breeze. And for a second, just a second, you could almost believe the house is breathing again. It's hard to say goodbye to something so quietly brilliant, but that's the nature of wind, isn't it? Always moving, always leaving. You step back out under the open sky. The stars have fully emerged now, slowly blinking their ancient light into the cooling desert night. And with them, a hush has fallen, the kind that isn't empty, but full of presence. Like the pause between a question and its answer. This was never just about wind towers. It was about the people who built them, lived under them, trusted them to carry away the days, heat, and bring in something gentler. You were a guest in their world, their breeze, their shade. And now you carry a bit of that with you. Word count 1076. So now the story slows. You're no longer climbing rooftops or ducking into old homes. You're simply here, wherever here is. Head resting, breath softening, thoughts unspooling like silk threads in warm air. Take a moment. Let your body feel the stillness. Notice the faint pressure of your blankets, the weight of your own limbs sinking ever so slightly deeper. The wind has done its work. It doesn't rush. It doesn't shout. It slips between stone and shadow, between yesterday and now, just like sleep. Imagine one last wind tower, standing, quiet in the moonlight. Not grand, not crumbling, just enough. The air moves gently through it, brushing over clay walls and woven mats, stirring a wind chime that hasn't been touched in years. A single note rings out, then fades. You lie beneath it, not as a tourist, not as a guest, just part of it. One more dreamer among thousands, cooled by a kindness too ancient to need thanks. No more need to wonder or remember or guess. No more steps to retrace. The towers have done what they were meant to do, and now, so can you. Close your eyes. Let the breeze carry you. Sleep well.